A'ja Wilson, the MVP of the WNBA, the greatest player in women's basketball that nobody cares about. She was caught on tape a year ago preaching to, wagging her finger at, telling Kelsey Plum, her teammate, about her, white privilege. And
the Las Vegas Aces are currently in full crisis mode. Their backcourt is struggling, Coach Becky Hammon is yelling at her players, and they are on their way back to Vegas, trailing the New York Liberty 0-2 in the WNBA playoffs. The last thing they needed was more controversy, but then this video leaked of star forward A'ja Wilson sharing her honest view about white players, and it's all everyone can talk about now. And it shows us once again why Caitlyn is receiving support from the fans, and A'ja is falling down more and more by day.
Us as black women, Paige reminds me a lot of you. Like, you say you're not really about me. And she knows how her privilege has gotten her to that point. And also, like, she's good at basketball, obviously. But, like, she understands her privilege and, like, pushes her over the top, in a sense. It reminds me a lot of you. And I mean, that's a compliment.
Is that a compliment? Let's start there. Is that a compliment that she understands her white privilege?
I mean, what is she really saying? Like, hey, white girl, you know what, you cracker-ass cracker? You have a lot of white guilt, and I approve. I mean, the way this thing was going viral, like you said, Jason, and I saw the comments, which I was liberally retweeting on Twitter, there should be a hashtag now, Stop A'ja Hate. But it's amazing, but this is the problem that a lot of people have with Caitlyn Clark fans and supporters. They don't buy into it. And I'm going to mention this again. One of the more interesting aspects of this fanhood is that some of the biggest supporters of Caitlyn Clark are not whites. They're actually black males.
The video has received over 20 million views on X, previously Twitter, where it was posted following the Aces Game 1 defeat to the Liberty. Brianna Stewart and Sabrina Ionescu, both white, led the way for New York with 55 points. In the video, the 2024 WNBA MVP speaks with teammate Kelsey Plum on how white privilege drove athletes like Plum and Paige Bueckers. They were seated courtside as the UConn standout faced Caitlyn Clark and Iowa, which prompted the race discussion. Wilson was attempting to suggest that Bueckers reminded her of Plum in a positive light, but many others who watched the video on social media, including the Caitlyn Clark fan account that shared it, did not see it that way. In retrospect, one statement in particular appeared to be Wilson criticizing the skill of great white athletes while complimenting her friend in a backhanded manner. And also, like, she's good at basketball, obviously, Wilson told her Las Vegas teammate Plum. She understands her privilege is what pushes her over the top in a sense. It reminds me a lot of you.
Everything A'ja Wilson is saying is I probably tend to think it wasn't even on accident. Knew she was being recorded, knew it would get out there. And it was, because I think this was a year ago, and it's gone viral now this week. But to me, it was a message being sent to Caitlyn Clark of like, you want to come into our league, this is how you need to be. And I think it's a message to Nike. Again, as I talked about last week, based off the Ethan Strauss deal, A'ja Wilson has a signature shoe and logo with Nike. No one's gonna buy her shoe, no one cares. But Nike's bending over backwards, trying to please A'ja Wilson and Don Staley and the whole BLM crowd we gotta promote A'ja first. And so there's a mindset that A'ja has to adopt to justify getting treatment she knows she doesn't deserve.
Like Jason Whitlock, most people didn't see it that way. They were more than critical on A'ja's comments. If you hear, and that's a compliment, it's never a compliment, pointed out a popular reply to the video.
I don't understand this. Many of these people, like A'ja, are so used to being able to dispense and force white guilt upon others that when people don't comply, then it becomes something they can't even handle. Really. And so I just find this whole thing interesting about the television ratings and who's supporting and now people are leaving.
Damn, A'ja, I was rooting for you, remarked another harsh comment about X. What kind of loser mindset is this? Kelsey Plum and Paige Bueckers are some of the best female hoopers and we're talking about privilege?
The sense of entitlement and the sour, bad, nasty attitudes that many of these players are exhibiting I think exactly is one of the reasons why for the past 20 some odd years, nobody has cared about this league, why there is certainly an antipathy towards it. And quite frankly, I wouldn't blame anyone if they were just Caitlyn Clark or Indiana Fever fans and only care and watch her games moving forward. Honestly, I think it's completely justified because quite frankly, that's what these young ladies, these fine feminist athletes seem to be asking for and almost begging for. But here's the issue. They don't want the ramifications of such actions. And Jason,
I mean, it's pretty obvious, right? We've been talking about envy and jealousy of Caitlyn Clark for the whole year, and this just proves it has been going on for even longer than that. She was still in college at that time. Even back then, the so-called greats knew who was coming for their spotlight, Caitlyn Clark. And now that Caitlyn's out and the ratings are dropping each passing game, they want her back in. So, now they want her? But when she's playing, you all hate her? Weird, right?
and these players that are now complaining, if there are any, about the ratings, about being abandoned. Well, wait a minute. Many of you were the very same ones that was pointing the finger and saying you're racist and we don't want or need your support. So in theory, you're getting what you want and you should be happy for the lower ratings. So be careful what you wish for.
This topic has been seen as highly controversial, but it needs to be talked about. Can't we all just appreciate the greatness we're witnessing? And is it really something a three-time MVP A'ja Wilson should talk about? Should she be worried about Clark when she's a self-proclaimed GOAT? One thing is certain, Caitlyn Clark had an exciting debut season in 2024. Clark shattered numerous WNBA records and led the Fever to a 6th-place playoff spot, but Clark's achievement has not been without its hurdles. Clark, like many other WNBA players, dealt with physicality throughout the season, some of which was seen as excessive. Sue Bird, a WNBA legend and former Seattle Storm star, shared her opinion on Clark's multiple shots this year. Bird made an eye-opening remark about the topic on an edition of the A Touch More podcast with Megan Rapinoe.
I watched the games. Not at any point did I think anybody was playing dirty against Caitlyn. Not at any point did I think Caitlyn was targeted. And I'm going to stop on that word because what happened was these petty jealousy narratives that got formed. Then when the season started and people saw people blocking Caitlyn's shot or picking her up full court, it then became, oh, they're targeting her. Oh, they're trying to hurt her. Mm-hmm. I cannot stress enough how insulting that is. That is probably like potentially the biggest insult you could throw at an athlete, especially an entire league of athletes.
Mm-hmm. Sue Bird, who played in the WNBA for 20 seasons, understands the distinction between purposeful targeting and simply physical play. The ex-Storm star feels Caitlyn Clark was not a target, and that spreading such rumors is a disrespect to the Fever Guard. While certain actions, such as being heavily guarded full court or collecting an elbow during a rebounding fight, may not have been intended to target Clark, others were unnecessary. During the Fever's 71-70 win over the Chicago Sky on June 1st, Chennedy Carter shoulder-checked Clark when the ball was out of play. The move was not a basketball play, and former head coach Teresa Weatherspoon disclosed her conversation with Carter, in which she acknowledged the foul's inappropriateness. Players understandably get frustrated and emotional during games. However, Carter and Weatherspoon recognized that there are more effective strategies to harness these emotional times. Players from throughout the league, including Caitlyn Clark, learned more about how to handle oneself during competition, and all parties will emerge stronger and more prepared to continue playing basketball at a top level. At the same time, she also talked about the fans Caitlyn has brought to the sport, and especially the fact that other players or fan bases are blaming her for bringing, quote, racist fans into the sport. According to Bird, this isn't true. And I've got to say I agree with her on this one. Sue was talking about the little proportion of so-called fans that have been accusing Caitlyn of racism or have been acting out themselves. And it's true, the league has grown over the last 6 months, exponentially even, but Caitlyn isn't the one asking for them to act out, is she? So, why are the other players so pressed? For instance, take Aja Wilson or Alyssa Thomas, who is blaming Caitlyn and her fans for the hate.
It's been a lot of nonsense. I think in my 11-year career, I've never experienced the racial comments from the Indiana Fever fan base. We had her face on a serious matter that happened in this world, and it's unacceptable, honestly. And there's no place for it, and we've been professional throughout the whole entire thing, but I've never been called the things that I've been called on social media, and there's no place for it. And
I mean, she even blatantly stated it were the Fever fans, throwing a side dig at Caitlyn and what happened between her and Dejanai Carrington on the court in Game 1 during the playoffs. The fact is, bad behavior from fans has been there for years, but now they've suddenly found a scapegoat. Someone that is bringing in so many eyeballs and has so much noise around here that it's easy to put the blame on her. But these fake fans have been here for way longer.
Can we just like call a spade a spade? Racism has been impacting the WNBA well before this year. This is not a new thing. Sure. This is, and in that way, I do think Caitlyn's being used as a pawn. Mm-hmm. Caitlyn didn't bring racism to the WNBA. This has been happening. And that, I think, is what's been such a shock for all of us, that other people are surprised by this. We've been trying to tell you. And once again, for so long, as a player, I would almost joke. I'd be like, I would have loved to have shut up and dribble. In so many ways, I would have loved to have been valued as a basketball player. I would have been loved to have been spoken about just for my play. I think everybody in the league can say that. But nobody ever let us do that. So what happened? We started to build a backbone, a little bit of an identity. We understood that in order to push our league forward, we were gonna have to combat these things. And then you know what else we learned? It feels good to stand up for yourself. It feels even better to stand up for others. We started to learn that people were learning from us and able to follow us in a different way. And who are we following? Black women. So that's such an important part. And I think, again, I get sad when I talk about this a little bit in that we're still not talking about basketball.
No.
We're still not allowed to be focused on for our basketball play. And it's not to say we're not going to continue to combat these things. That'll always exist, I think, in the fabric of our league, but we still aren't talking about basketball.
Yeah.
But why is it such a recurring problem? What's happening, and what does Caitlyn have to do with it? Simple, like said before, it's just easy to shove in onto her. But what's really going on is something way bigger, something the WNBA has to fix.
But I also feel like they have been greatly failed by the league and by Kathy, the commissioner, this year. Like you said, this isn't new. This has been coming from the racism that the South Carolina team has experienced in the last 3-4 years. That's been very explicit and, sort of in the consciousness. From the racism that Angel Reese specifically and that the LSU team has experienced in the college landscape, and particularly the rivalry with Iowa, two of the best teams in the country with the biggest players and the best storylines, and you have bona fide superstars in Angel Reese and Caitlyn Clark, which should have been just an unbelievably exciting time where everyone can just celebrate the explosion of women's basketball into a whole new stratosphere. We all saw this. We all experienced it. We knew this was coming. It's already been here. We knew it was coming. This wasn't a surprise. And not just the comments that the commissioner made a few weeks ago where she basically implied that the racial tension is good for business and invoking Magic and Bird. It's not good for business. It's never good for business. And sort of sidestep the question about racism and misogyny and hate that the players are receiving online, basically saying don't go on social media or, it's sort of not real.
What's your thoughts on that? Could the league do more to protect its players? And even better, should they protect Caitlyn Clark from bullies like Aja Wilson and Alyssa Thomas, who clearly have an alternate motive to go after her? And how will this all develop over the coming months? It's still more than 200 days before Clark will play again, but in the meantime, a lot can change. The question is not if it will change, but if it will change for the better or worse. What do you think? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below and let's start a conversation.